Hey everyone, it is Tony Will. I am back with another fantastic episode of Women In, and I cannot wait for you to meet my guest. But before you do that, let me tell you what you're listening to. Women In is a podcast that celebrates women and the individuals in their lives who are lifting them up. You will hear from all kinds of super cool people in my life, including my guest today, and they're going to share their stories to inspire others to support all the extraordinary women around them. This is a space to be disruptive, forward-thinking, and change agents for humankind. It is uncensored, fun, and curiosity-driven. This is what I'm passionate about, breaking down barriers for my kids' generation. It's equal parts about my guests and the places we came into each other's lives, whether it be the Kalamazoo Wings, Mindfulness Elevated, Tony Will Coaching, or you happen to be in my family and friends circle. My guest today is the fabulous Gifford Booth. Gifford is a co-founder and CEO of the TAI Group, a leadership development and coaching consultancy that focuses on supporting individuals and organizations to cultivate authentic, high-impact performance. Unlike traditional corporate training firms, TAI is known for blending techniques from the arts, like theater and performance, with business strategy and professional development. The core belief is that true leadership isn't about playing a role, it's about being fully yourself with presence, clarity, and connection. That means helping leaders and teams tap into their emotional intelligence, communication style, and personal values to inspire and trust and drive meaningful change. As a global coach, Gifford specializes in working with next-gen family business leaders, helping them navigate the complexities of legacy, identity, and influence with the clarity and conviction. He's also a creator of Fearlessly Authentic, a proprietary program that empowers women to claim their unique power, drop the apology, and lead with unshakable presence under pressure.
Wow. There we go.
Hi, Gifford.
Hey, Tony.
Oh, what a bio. I have to ask, how is it to have that read out loud and hear it?
Yeah, it's good. I'm going to say good.
Well, yeah.
Here's what I want to say. TAI stands for The Actors Institute. We were originally called The Actors Institute. And we were doing work helping actors grow as artists, understand what their personal voice was, understand what it is that drove them, understand their imperative. And then we started to give them the tools to have an impact, to communicate in auditions or on stage, go beyond where they stop themselves. So, look, I came in as a humble student of the Actors Institute because I wanted to be an actor and I suffered from stage fright. And I would get on stage and go, oh my God, the lights are on, rather than do what I was supposed to do, which is, carry on. And I did an early workshop with the Actors Institute called The Mastery. And what happened is, in that, I got stage fright again. I got embarrassed. I stopped. And the guy who was leading it said, well, take a breath. And I went, what? He said, take a breath and keep going. I'm like, no, I got embarrassed. He goes, who cares? What's more important, that you got embarrassed or do you have something to say? I'm like, okay, all right, I'm in. So off I went. Then I started being part of the community of the Actors Institute, became my business in Boston. And actors would turn to us and they would say, hey, so what's my image? And we would go, well, who are you? And they would go, oh, no, we don't have time to figure that out. So we started working with them to understand, well, what it is that motivated them, what drove them, what is that imperative that they have, what's that unique voice? And then we're going to give agency to that voice so you can have an impact. And lo and behold, we had a little school, but the corporate world found us and thought, well, wait, there's places where we can apply what we're learning beyond just in the theater. So we can take tools and techniques and apply them to anybody. And so that's a really long way of answering. How does it feel to hear that? Well, I've been doing this a long time. And so it feels good to go, yep, that's what I do.
I love that. And we're going to talk about the unapologetic piece with Fearlessly Authentic, but I love, that's why I asked this question about having your bio read back to you, because that is who you are, and being proud of that. And standing in that, I'm just, and I'm honored to have gotten to meet you. So I'd love for you to answer this question because I always
Sure.
ask one question that's the same, which is how did we
Sure.
meet? Because I think it's so powerful how the power of connection and just saying yes to an email and saying, yeah, let's get together and talk. So how did you and
Well,
I meet?
we met through a mutual friend named Steve Lentini, and I actually know that you are a Lentini. And
I
Steve
am.
Lentini and I had a teacher whose name was Tony Stone. And he said, well, you're not going to believe this, but I've just met this incredible woman whose name is Tony Lentini and Tony Wills. And so it was like, well, great. And he said, she should know about what you're doing with this women's program. I'm like, okay, well, we met. You started telling me your story, and I thought, well, here's a kindred spirit. Here's somebody who has found their voice. And what is so inspiring is all the different places where you have found a way to have that voice have an impact. And some of those places are not so obvious, given your current job. Yeah, and especially as a woman. I mean, I right? I mean, is that?
Oh my God. You get it. You see me, Gifford. You see me. Yeah. And here's the thing when you talk about finding our voice, when you and I started chatting, I think this was in December-ish, if I recall correctly. But you were like, yeah, I did a TEDx too. And I'm like, you
Oh,
did? So I immediately. So let's talk about that because I get asked about that a lot. And I went and watched yours and it was fantastic. And it was part of your story was what you
oh,
opened with.
it's true.
Yeah, so let's talk about your
Okay.
TEDx. Tell everyone what what's about and what that experience was like for you.
Sure. Okay. Well, I did open the. I have a couple stories I could tell. I did open the TEDx. No, here's what I want. I want to just tell a little anecdote.
Yeah.
The guy before me was brilliant. Did I tell you this? Okay.
No, you
The
didn't.
guy before me looked like this little Buddha, and he came on the edge of the stage, and he threw $101 bills into the audience, and I'm like, what? And he said, you think this is so important? And he told his story. His name is Home, Home. And he said, he's Vietnamese, and he was part of what they call the American War. And his father was in a prison camp somewhere. He had a twin. His grandmother put him on a boat to go see if he could find his father. And on that boat, it was, okay, pirates came aboard. They stole things. He was adrift at sea with just a bag of rice. He finally landed to shore. He was now teaching at Columbia's teacher college. And he had his journey was incredible. And I thought, I am not getting up on the stage after this guy was just like, people were just blown away. All right, well, there you go. When the curtain's up, the curtain's up, and when you've got to go on stage, you've got to go on stage.
As they say, the show
That's
must go
right.
on.
So anyway, back to me. It was the theme of the whole conference was mindfulness. So mine was, how do you get mindful about this inner voice that you have? And I talked about one of my corporate clients. I called him Cerberus because he was like the many-headed dog that was at the gate of hell. And I was working for a consultant who said, I want you to work with my client because I don't want to work with him anymore. And so I was terrified as I walked into this guy's office. And I found out the good news. I found out he was more terrified of me than I was of him because he thought I was going to do kind of some sort of therapy with him. So anyway, I started to ask him about not his numbers, not his career, not all the people that he'd fired. I started asking him what got him out of bed in the morning. What did he want to experience? What motivated him? What poetry did he like? And he goes, what? And I saw that there was a poetry book on his desk. And so I made him get out the poetry book and I made him read me a poem. And he was like reading, well, da, 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 da. I said, no, what? And I said, read it slowly to me. And so he started reading it slowly. And all of a sudden he teared up because the poem had meaning to him. I'm like, well, what's that meaning? And he was like, no one's ever asked me this before. So I was not asking him what's important about his job. I was not asking him what's important about the numbers. I was asking him what is in his core. Not what his values were, but what did he value? And this went on for several sessions. And he came back and reported that on the weekends he was listening to The Doors again, and that was really fun. And so all of this, he softened as a human being. The bottom line is he softened as a human being. And while he was still a ruthless kind of guy, he thought, well, maybe people aren't stupid. Maybe they have something in them that they're passionate about. So maybe I could find out more about that. He went on to then go to a whole other company and required everybody have coaching. And he became, and he put a grand piano in the lobby of the firm, and it was an insurance firm, and so there would be music, and there would be, so he cultivated a whole culture around him that was not just one of hard-nosed numbers. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I talked about when you're mindful and listening to that inner voice, that inner wisdom, that core, then all sorts of amazing things can happen. This is where we talk about lead from not who you think you should be, from who you are. And that is so much easier said than actually done, because there's all sorts of reasons why we think we're not enough, why we shouldn't be, why we can't. It goes on and on. So I'll stop here. And that's what...
That's the TEDx. And it was, and remind me, how many years ago
it was 20, I think it was around 2014, actually. So good 10 years ago.
And do people still to this day say, hey, I've seen your TEDx, I've watched your TEDx?
A few people do. I have to point them to it. There was much more activity at the beginning. I think maybe they will now. I'm going to resurrect it.
We are right now, because there's so much work that goes into prepping for a TEDx. And what do you recall from the prepping of that?
The reason I was a terrible actress, I could never memorize lines. So I'll just be truthful. I found a whole other profession where I didn't have to necessarily memorize the lines. And I remember I had a team of people around me, just friends and coworkers. We found the story I wanted to tell. I wrote it, couldn't remember it. And, so it was just a lot of reiteration and prep. Nothing takes the place of prep. But I remember standing on that red circle and just watching the time go by and having one flicker of moments going, wait, where am I? Breathe, stay focused, like that. How was it for you? What was yours?
Yeah, so mine was on, I told two different stories basically about perceived weaknesses actually being strengths. I leveraged that through my leadership pillars, and I gave a professional example and a personal example. And so I talked about being a minority in sports as a female GM of a men's professional hockey team. And then on the personal side, I talked about my decision to live alcohol free and do so out loud instead of in the shadows. And so I talked about the how, because I think it's, to your point, it's really hard when there are people like you and I getting on a stage and saying, here's what we did and here's something to learn. Well, how do I do that in my life? Because one of the questions I want to talk about is, like you mentioned about me, how I found my voice. And part of the work you're doing is helping women specifically find their voices. And so my leadership pillars point you to the how. So if I were to ask you the question on how you found your voice and how you're building that into Fearlessly Authentic, what are some of those keys for women in particular to find their voices?
Yeah. I've just finished working with a group. And everybody came in and said, oh, it's so important to be authentic. We have to be authentic. We have to be ourselves. We absolutely, and that's what we do. What do I value? I value my authenticity. And yes, okay, yes, of course. But let's dig into how that authenticity, what is that authenticity? How do you name it? So I do some really simple but profoundly, no, simple but sophisticated, I would say, exercises that lead to something profound. And so what I do is I basically ask them, just write 5 things that are important to you and start to drill down. Well, why are these things important? And then when you get to that level, drill down again. Why are these things important? So say family is important. Well, why is it important? What do you mean, why is it important? Well, because, I get love. Yes, but what do you get? Well, I get purpose. Well, beyond purpose, what do you get? Well, I get to plan. I get to watch people grow. I get to grow myself. Oh, so growth is a bottom line thing that's important to you. Oh, I never equated growth with family. So we do. So yes, we do, but, and everybody, this isn't brand new information to them. It's just being brought to the forefront where they can name it and codify it. So we do this for 5 different things, and we begin to understand that there's themes that runs through people's lives. And I ask them, what do you need from coworkers in order for you to be successful? Not what are you going to give them, which is where everybody wants to jump to, but what do you need from them in order to be successful? What do you need from work in order to be successful? What do you need from your family? What do you need from your friends? Think about a time that really worked for you. What were all the elements that were there? Think about a time when life was terrible. What got invalidated? What was violated? All of these. So really, and this is where the work of the theater comes in, because you do this as a character analysis when you're studying a part. You want to know what motivates them. You want to know what makes them tick. You want to know what we call it fighting for. That's that imperative. And then we hone this down into, so who are you as a leader? And women will say to me, well, this is me as a person. I don't know that I bring this to work. And I said, but isn't the person you someone who brings things to work? Well, yes, but if I'm talking about empowering and sponsoring and growing, oh, that is my leadership. Oh, is that what you do with your children? Oh, it's exactly what I do with my children. So we begin to see that there's an imperative that's deeper than just saying, yes, I should be authentic. Well, what is that authenticity? And how do you bring that forward? Does that make sense? Is that what I'm saying?
Oh, it does, because one of my core values is authenticity. But if you were to sit there and say to me, because what that exercise you walk through, like it's called, one of the versions of it I've heard of it called is the 5 whys.
Okay, sure.
Where you just ask why over like 5 times, why, right? And I love this because you then get down to the core of it. So why is authenticity important to you, Tony? Well, I want to show up as one version of me. I want to be. Now I'm putting myself on the spot, but I want to be a role model for other women to be exactly who they are and unapologetically. Well, why? Well, because I work in a male-dominated industry, and sometimes it's hard. And if I'm showing up as my full, confident self, and I take up space in the room, I will be respected more. Well, why? Well, because I want the next generation of women that work in sports behind me to know that there's a path forward for them.
Yeah. And
well, why?
and also, is this true? If they do it, it gives you permission to do it. If you give them permission to do it, it gives you permission to do it. So it becomes this beautiful virtuous loop.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. So Gifford, let me ask you this. Why women? Why did you choose to build this whole program around women? Because I love how you build the theater into it. Now I don't have experience in a theater because Lord knows putting me on a stage as an actor would be not. It wasn't in my
But putting you
scope,
on
but
stage as an act would be great.
exactly.
I'm with you.
Exactly. So why women?
Yeah.
Where did this come from and your desire to work with
Oh
women?
boy, that's a. You know, I work with everybody.
Hmm.
And I worked with everybody. I worked with actors. I worked with shamanic healers. I've worked with British lords. I've worked with CEOs of companies. I have worked the gamut. It was from a conversation with one of my clients. And she was saying to me, I have such strong women leaders in the making. They're emerging, but but all of the apology, all of the imposter syndrome, all of the I shouldn't do it this way. Wait, I shouldn't have my emotional reaction. Humanity needs to be left at the door. She says, I'm just trying to shake that out of them, but I don't quite know how to do it. And I said, well, I do. Now it'll be very interesting if they allow me into the room, and they have. And there's no question about it. And we just travel, and we don't really do. Here's how men operate versus how women operate. That's not the conversation I'm having with them. That's an important conversation, and that's someone else should have it. What I'm having the conversation about is, who are you? And let's validate that and bring it forward. And that is, I have 3 sisters. I have women on my staff. I have best friends who are women. I have mentors and teachers who are women. And these women I've seen as models of people who are whole people. Who, we all have our times of apologizing. We all have our times of imposter syndrome, but that's not what they feature, and that's not where they come from. And so it feels really important, I'll say, important to do this work. That's how I feel. It was an opportunity, and I took it, and it's flying.
Yeah. So there's a couple places I want to go because as you know, I find this endlessly fascinating. But I want to move over to some of the women in your life who you high level just mentioned, because I think it's really important to highlight who these women are that have helped you become the Gifford you are today. So if you were to highlight some of these women, who would they be?
Sure. I have to say the first one I would highlight is a woman named Toni Stone. And Toni Stone ran an organization called Wonderwork Studio. And basically it was for entrepreneurs. And we would go to Vermont every month. And it was about practical metaphysics. So it really was about the whole person. And it was about not just as entrepreneurs, what's your next goal? Although there was lots of goal setting, but it was, who are you as a, and I feel like we did crafts as well. I mean, it was Toni. We learned to cook. We learned to be in the woods. All of these kinds of things with Toni, and she was just this force. Who I was with her for 30 years. I went to Vermont almost every week for every month for 30 years. Wow. She was a real teacher in the capital T sense of the community around her was so diverse. It was people from all economic walks of life, and men and women. And that's where I met Steve Lentini originally. And Toni passed away 3 years ago, I think it was. And, she's not gone. The other night she came and started yelling at me to get over myself. And
I feel like she and I would.
Totally. She was Italian. Let me just say this. So, there you go. Oh. Italian. Yeah. through and through.
Oh, oh, I feel like,
Yeah.
yeah, I wish I would
Yeah,
have
yeah,
known her. She sounds,
you would have gotten along great with her. But so anyway, so she's not gone, and her teachings
right.
still resonate. And I don't know what happened the other night, except I woke up rearranged. She was mad at me for thinking my poor little small self. And like, okay, very good. Yeah,
Oh, what
I've
a
had there's a role model for me, an artist named Ann Richter, and Ann is in her 80s, and she calls me her mentor, and I say, well, okay, but you're my mentor, so we just have this mutual mentorship. She lives in Hell's Kitchen in New York. Her studio is on the other side of the wall, and she says she just has to force herself not to get out of bed, at least change her clothes before she goes into the studio, because she can't wait to get back into her work. She can't wait to get back into her art or whatever it is she's creating in the moment. And I said, looks like you're having fun. She goes, I'm not having fun. I'm engaged. I'm engaged. Wow. This isn't necessarily fun, but I mean, so she is just, her life as an artist is just, for me, a pure expression of creativity in everything she does.
Oh,
yeah.
Beautiful.
And then I would say there's one more who's my chief of staff, who's now retired, but her name is Chris Strong, and I love the last name, that her last name is Strong. She would just keep me clear. She was, sometimes I have notions that don't make it to my brain and don't make it out of my mouth in a really clear fashion, which isn't always great as a CEO to blurt something out without having some clarity around it. Yeah, right. I know.
Sometimes.
I guess, yeah, we get excited. That's exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, that's what, like,
right.
Passion just like
that's
oozes
right.
out of
that's
us.
Right. So those are three important. I was raised by three sisters. I'm the youngest boy. There you go. So
what are your hopefully your sisters will listen to this. What are your sisters?
Oh yeah, Claire, Natalie, and Joan.
Hello, ladies. You did a great job raising your brother.
Very sweet.
Oh, what a fabulous group of women.
It's true.
You brought something up earlier, so I want to ask you this question that you asked the one gentleman. What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Well, I think you could probably guess that it is this idea of helping people listen to themselves. It really does. It motivates me. I was on a call earlier this morning, a coaching call, and it was with a a very successful business executive who was letting down his guard and had the same imposter syndrome that the group of women have, and it's like helping him to help listening to himself about what he should do. I wasn't just giving him good advice. My advice was helping him to uncover and tune in to that part of his inner wisdom. That's what I'm helping anybody that I work with. So I would say seeing the trend, I'm a coach as well. And I would say just being able to have this impact with people. It was so important for me that someone said to me, look, you have a unique voice. I went, what? I think I'm weird. He goes, yes, you are weird, but you have a unique voice and you can make an impact with that. That was life altering in that moment. And so I just want to give that to people.
Yeah. And that's what gets you out of bed every day.
It does.
Yeah. Tell me, so when you think about the work you're doing and you're coaching clients and you're working with groups, you're doing,
and I have a team in Europe and a team in the US who are working. So it's a there's a group of us who are doing it.
Okay. Wow. So, well, let's talk about that. Wait, tell everyone where you live, where they hear if they hear traffic.
Brooklyn. That's I'm in Brooklyn. That's just Brooklyn saying hello.
It is. I just want everyone to know. Yeah, Gifford's in Brooklyn, New York. So when you hear the traffic, that's why. But it's a beautiful sound. So let's talk about the coaching piece. So Talk about your group, because there are the one in Europe and then here in the U.S. So what have you built as an entrepreneur over the years?
Yeah, we have 90, 95, 98% of our coaches are from the theater. So what we bring to non-theater people in the corporate world is a whole different point of view. So when we're coaching with people, we listen in a different way. We listen to what they want to say. We listen to how they're either connecting with people or not. We work with them. Sometimes we go in through pure communication, like how do they stand on stage, or how do they reach an audience? How do they give better presentations? But a lot of times people come to us, this is for individuals, for executive presence. Well, what does executive presence mean? Well, take out the word executive and you go to presence, and bringing the full integrated person into the room. Automatically we think, oh, that person has gravitas, that person has authority, and that person has presence. So we were working one-on-one, but then as we work with groups, I mean, this can go everything from after a merger, two different cultures trying to talk to each other. It can be teams that are dysfunctional. How do we get people to work? We really call ourselves a human interaction firm. So it's all things that are human interaction, so that it's a relationship with yourself first, a relationship with another, and then a relationship with others. And all of my and this is an aspect of theater. And so all of my actors, coaches, some of them, like one was nominated for a Tony a couple years ago. I have people in West End, I have people in the movies, and some are just completely retired. But all of them bring this kind of discipline into a room with either an individual or with teams. And we take them through experiences where they learn things about themselves, where they learn how their behaviors are either enhancing communication or not enhancing communication. So it's so experiential, and that's what we built, is a company that does experiential work. We don't just put up slides and say, hey, this is the 5 steps you need to do. Now go out and do them. We say, okay, stand up here, talk to me. Oh, I have no idea what you're saying. I remember one person coming in, and his HR people made him come. He didn't want to be there, and he said, so give us a little 5-minute speech. And so he started talking, and I had a room full of people who didn't know him. Some of them were my coaches, some of them were clients actually. And they said, well, okay, the audience reaction was, well, it looks like we're in trouble. Oh, it looks like we had a really bad year. And the guy said, I was congratulating everybody. It was like, that did not come across. It did not come across that you were congratulating people. It came across that we better work harder.
Yeah, we did have a great year, and he's going, yeah, that's me.
That's right, exactly.
People.
So the disconnect, yeah. Oh. How do you bridge the disconnect? And this is who we are. This is what we.
So how did you expand the business overseas? Like, what was that like? Were there actors overseas that wanted to become coaches, yeah. and you had a clientele over there? Is that how the growth occurred?
Here's how we did it. One of the major consulting groups found us in the phone book in 1996.
Okay, good old
that's right. They wanted acting training for their most senior partners because they were doing client conferences and not getting a lot of return on investment. And so we took a group of them, 11 men, 1 woman. There was 1 woman in there. And we took them through their paces, just what we did with actors, about you're standing on a global stage. What do you have to say? We're going to take away your slides. You have to be a human being talking to another human being. Go, and at the end of the year, the CEO called us up and said, you lied to us. I'm like, no, we didn't. These people are wonderful. He said, yes, but you didn't tell us that the culture around here would change. You didn't tell us that they'd become better colleagues, that they'd become better mentors. Their spouse would call up and go, I don't know what you did to him, but thank you very much. It was because we were teaching that communication was listening and speaking. But the great thing about this firm is they leave that firm and they become founders of their own businesses or CEOs of different businesses. So they really began to take us with them. And so we started, it was a match made in heaven, and we're still work with them. But we found a way to, just take the opportunities that were on both sides of the Atlantic.
Yeah. And collaborate, partner.
That's right.
And bring more of that perspective that is so unique, the actors, theater, culture, and build and share with corporate America how your business, you as an individual, can show up and it be a positive for the business overall, and you as a human being. Yes, this is. I love the and it's been how long? You said 1996. So when did you start the business?
Well, we were the Actors Institute in the late '80s, so I've been doing this a long time. Yeah.
Well, hey, So like
40-ish years. Yeah,
maybe.
Absolutely.
Phenomenal. You mentioned poetry earlier on, and so I wanted, and I don't know really much about poetry, but I do want to know what you're reading, and maybe poetry is part of that. But are you, as a coach, I find that coaches that I interview, and since I'm a coach myself, like I'm a lifelong learner. And so what are you reading or what are you taking in these days? And is poetry part of that? Because none of actually I've had one podcast guest talk about poetry. So you'd be the second.
I do read. Well, I do read poetry for pleasure, and I have it by my bedside. Let's say it that way. And every now and then I'll pick it up and I'll enjoy it. It's not so, and it's Billy Collins I'm reading, and he was a national poet laureate, and it's his book called Water. I gave it away to people at Christmas, and then someone gave it to me. So that was like, okay, what you give, you get, So that was lovely. I reconnected with an old friend from 40 years ago who studies is a practitioner of Bhakti yoga, and it's like the Hare Krishnas. And so I'm reading the philosophy of Bhakti yoga, which is about the sweetness of life, and there's an aspect of it that is about listening. God will prompt you, and God will tell you where to go. And this is what I identify with, because we have an inner voice inside us. I say it's your own DNA and your own internal wisdom that will prompt you and tell you where to go. And when things aren't right, can help you get out of that. But it's really interesting. It's taking me on a whole other kind of thought process. So that's why I like it. I find it very refreshing, because it just takes me out of the day to day and into some. I likened it to when I was in Mexico when I was a youth and I was snorkeling and I was brought out. You just do things and you don't think about the consequences. So someone said, hey, you want to get on this boat and go snorkeling? It's like, that's a great idea. So I had flippers and snorkels, and this guy took me out, and a group of us out into the middle of the ocean, and then left. I'm like, is he coming back? Oh yeah, he said he'll be back in an hour or so. I'm like, really? But okay, we're here to snorkel. So you go under the water, and it's beautiful, and it's calm, and it's choreographed, and you put your head out of the water, and it's like it's bobbing, and it's dark, and it's like, where is everybody? And then you go back, and it's calm. So anyway, I'm equating reading this Bhakti yoga with the calm, other kind of, and then.
Well, we need that. We need the balance of that when you're an entrepreneur, CEO, and you're very busy. Absolutely. Yeah, and you're probably traveling, and you live in Brooklyn. That's a busy. That's like bobbing in busy
That's
water.
Right. That's enough.
Yeah. So, I want to know, going back to fearlessly
Yeah.
authentic, because one of the questions I have is like, how do you support other women? And clearly there's a connection there. But if someone's interested in like understanding that program, or where is that something that me, if I'm Googling fearlessly authentic, I find and can look you and
Yeah.
your team up, or is it done in
Yeah.
workplaces?
Sure,
Explain
sure,
all
sure.
that.
Well, don't Google fearlessly authentic, because I'll tell
There you
you why.
go.
Target has a new gay pride line of cheap clothing called Fearlessly Authentic. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me.
Oh, okay. Well, of course
I
they
mean,
would,
I don't.
Gifford,
I
of
mean, I
course.
like that it's pride, but I didn't necessarily like that that it's these t-shirts and nightgowns. But anyway, so don't Google Fearlessly Authentic.
Yeah.
Google the T as in Thomas, A as in Apple, I as in Institute, the actor, the TAI Group. And then
Got
you'll
it.
find Fearlessly Authentic. And look, I would love to, offer to anybody who's listening here a sample of it, a one-on-one session, at not at a corporate price, but at a very discounted price, so people could experience it. And so that is something that when you go on the website, you can find a link to
Yeah.
that, and we'll have it set up for women in.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So just mention that you heard
Yeah.
Gifford on the podcast, and I appreciate that. I think one of the things I see, and I'm working on, and I mentioned this in my little exercise I ran myself through in the
Hmm.
5 Whys, which is I often see women making themselves small. And the way you said it was kind of perfect, which is finding their voice. It's another way to say, how do we find your
Yeah.
voice? And I always am like, ladies, spread your peacock
Yeah.
feathers, because they're beautiful, and we're all unique and different in all kinds of ways. And this is an abundant life. It's not, there's no scarcity
Yeah,
in
for
this.
sure.
So take up space, and if you're not sure how, there are tools and
That's
resources
right.
out there
That's right.
to help you
This
do
is
that.
where, so I work with a colleague in delivering these programs. Currently I'm working with a colleague delivering this program. And what she does is she takes them through theater exercises about physically taking up space. What's it like to physically take up space? Just breathe and feel your body expanding in the space, which is it's just what you said. It's just a whole other way in. There's lots of different ways into this, but that is a really, that's so great. And so in the work that we do, we combine this internal inquiry with then expressing it. How do you say it out loud? How do you embody what it is you want and slow down, see it land, and let the audience give you feedback on what the qualities are. I mean, we just finished a session, and this woman just wanted to say, well, it's not perfect. I didn't have time to write it, and I would never do this. I'm really embarrassed about it. It's like, just say it and slow down and say what's important to you. The audience was like so moved, and she goes, I can't believe they're hearing these words from me. It's like, you said them. And she's like, yeah, but I didn't have time. Wow, perfection is protection. It's your need to be perfect is just protecting you from the vulnerability, which is your strength, as you talk about, Tony. The vulnerability, which is your strength, and having it be present to us. That's what makes you a leader. That is what informs your leadership. That's what makes us want to follow you and feel like we could be present at the same time. It's that Marianne Williamson quote.
Yeah.
It's not our darkness that we're so afraid of. It's our light. And when we let our light shine, we allow others to do the same, right?
Yeah, it's almost. I know I had this conversation once where sometimes you always hear about the fear of failure, and all this stuff, and I always call bullshit on that. But I think it's sometimes we have a fear of success.
I agree.
What if we have succeed, and then what, and that's where that imposter syndrome, because I want to ask you about that, because this comes up a lot in my conversations about women specifically, but the women in particular feel a lot of imposter syndrome. I know men do too, but do you find
Yes.
that? And is that tackled in the work
Absolutely.
you're doing when you're
yes,
coaching
sure.
someone?
It's tackled in that we get into this belief emotions loop where we have this idea that we want to express ourselves. So I would have a woman leader who wants to do things and actually be hired by the company for the job, and then start to think, oh, I don't really think I know what I'm doing. And then it starts to go into the emotion of, oh, you just feel terrible. I know I don't. And it's like, oh, I feel terrible because I'm not really up to this. And like, so you get into this where this negative belief and the negative emotion feeds the negative belief. And we talk about how do you, that's going to be there. We all have it. That's going to be there. But how do you break free of that? How do you, and we show you how to break free of that. Yeah, by listening to something else. And people don't know that there's something else besides these little voices that are chattering in our head. They don't know that there's something else there. This is what I help them discover. What is that internal wisdom that will not make you wrong, but will help you create and go forward? It will always be there for you to help you create and go forward.
Yeah, self-trust.
That's right. That's right. Self-advocacy. Self-trust.
Yes. Yeah. And just listening to that and believing that's how, what you think or know, and inner knowing. So I think about this with my relationship with alcohol. When I quit drinking almost 5 years ago, I had an inner knowing that Tony Party Time needed to retire. She needed to retire permanently. And, I make light of it, but it was work, but I had an inner knowing, and I live out loud that because I want to remove the shame and the stigma around that lifestyle choice. And so it was an inner knowing, though. That's where it started.
It really did. And what, the old, I'm sure this, as you said, it wasn't easy. And I'm sure the old urges and the old whatever came back. And even as you were not having alcohol to silence any of the voices were probably screaming at you. And it's like, well, how do you they'll scream, but how do you redirect it into something that will allow your life to go forward, that will allow your life to create? So that's what I've just discovered along the way, a pretty simple but sophisticated, profound process that helps people do this. I had one client who said, well, this is either claptrap or completely profound. I said, well, let's go with the profound part and let's see where that takes us,
Well, it must be profound because you've been doing it for over 40 years.
It's true.
So I want to compliment that and point that out.
Thank you very much.
And all the work. So as we wrap up, the last thing I like to ask is, where can people find you? I know you mentioned your website, but are there social platforms? Or where, name all.
Sure. I'm going to say LinkedIn under my name, Gifford Booth. Certainly LinkedIn. My TED Talk, I think, is in one of those, embedded somewhere in there. But if you Google Gifford Booth and TEDx, you'll find that. And then the website is the TAI Group. .com, THETAI Group.com. That's where they can find me.
Fantastic. Thank you for taking the time and meeting with me and sharing all the fantastic work you've been doing for as long as you've been doing it, and how many lives you've been impacting, especially the women and the program.
It's exciting, and there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, there really is. There's plenty of it out there for all of us.
That's right.
Who like
it's so fun to talk with you. And this went by like that. It was so, I've heard other guests say that with you, but it is. And so, your curiosity is very, I want to say it's very empowering and energizing. That's what I want to say. Your curiosity is energizing. I know it's taken you forward, but it's fun to be on the ride with you.
Thank you. And I look forward to staying
Absolutely.
Connected. And look forward to seeing, and who knows, I hope people listen to this and go check out the Fearlessly Authentic. I have it. Gifford was kind enough to share some pieces with me, and it's an honor. And thanks to Steve Lentini for connecting us. And I always ask that question because it's a lesson in saying yes and building these connections. They're just so important.
I was going to say, I follow anybody named Lentini. So, whether it's spaghetti sauce or,
We're great
That's
people.
right, I can
We're
tell.
Great people. Well, if you all are looking to connect with me, I'm not hard to find. The hockey side of my life is kwings.com. And then anything Tony Will related is now under its new website, tonywill.com. I'm also on social media platforms, LinkedIn and Facebook at Tony Lentini Will. And I'm on Instagram at I'm Tony Will. And until next time.